Hello everybody, Jake, your resident content cowboy here, yeehaw, and these are the best decks in the meta found in our massive open series tournament over the weekend. I'm going to show you the decks that outperformed everything else. One of them you've probably already heard about, Darkrai, Magnezone, but a few others were some incredible standouts. I'm going to have a link below to the tournament that this all took place in. It was 9 hours long, casted by myself and Jeff Hoagland. If you want to see all of these decks match up, there were some great games, so I would highly recommend checking that out. But without further ado, let's get into the best decks we found this weekend. First, I don't think there's a better place to start than with Darkrai Magnezone. This really cemented its spot as the top meta pick right now. Now, I know a lot of decks are going to come out and try to counter it, and there's some really cool counters in this video that I'm going to talk about, but this deck is unbelievably good. Just to give you some statistics on how well it did, it was the most played deck in our tournament with 500 games played, and it had a 65% win rate. To kind of put something like that into perspective, some of the next decks that did very well, like Palkia Vaporeon, had a 55% win rate. To put that in perspective against another deck that people thought possibly could be metal, Darkrai EX, Weavile EX got a 49% win rate. Whereas decks that we've seen do very well, like Mewtwo Gardevoir, I'm not kidding when I say this, had a 23% win rate. It's possible that half of their game twos, the players were busy in the shower, but still, I mean, we have some crazy results and the meta is shaken up in a huge way because of Space-Time Smackdown. So let's take a look at this deck. Again, this is the tournament winning version of this deck. It's Darkrai EX and Magnezone. The interesting thing about this is this only has one Druddigon and instead decides to have some early pressure with Kangaskhan in this deck. It also plays really well into the mirror matchups that we saw throughout the day with so many people playing Darkrai Magnezone and Darkrai Magnezone doing so well. This deck had multiple opportunities to run into other Darkrai decks and beat them. This deck has the new Magnemite, the old Magneton. So the reason behind this is this deck requires no lightning energy at all. You only run dark energy. You power Magneton using Volt Charge, and then you can use dark energy to power the additional colorless that the new Magnezone needs to do damage. New Magnezone, 1 lightning energy, 2 colorless energy. You are able to do 110 damage. Now you are discarding a lightning energy every time you're doing that damage, so you probably Volt Charge a couple times. You also have Druddigon as a wall. Again, Kangaskhan to do some early damage, especially into Drud walls. It plays really well. A couple of Leafs to get your Druddigon or Darkrai out of that active spot. Professor's Research, and let me talk to you about a few other cards here. Giant Cape is in this deck. One tool is in this deck, and it is used in a bunch of different ways. You can use it to give your Druddigon extra HP, so your opponents have to chip this down more intensely so that you can build up your bench even further. You can also use this for some really nice HP breakpoints on your Magnezone or your Darkrai. You also, of course, have 2 Pokeballs, 2 Professor's Research. You have a Cyrus, a Dawn, and a Giovanni. Giovanni gives you some big breakpoint KOs. Dawn will allow you to move 1 energy from your bench to your active spot, and there are so many times this is incredibly useful. You also can just simply put an energy on Darkrai, Dawn, send it up to Magnezone as one of its colorless energies, giving you a free 20 damage to your opponents, allowing you to get closer and closer to those KO breakpoints. And then finally, Cyrus. Cyrus is amazing because if you get any damage at all, even one of Darkrai's Nightmare Aura damages onto your opponent's active Pokemon that happens to be EX, even if they retreat it, take it to the bench, they are still within the danger zone because of Cyrus. One of the best cards in the new meta. I think Dawn, Cyrus are unbelievable in this meta. And this is a deck that, again, that won a tournament with over 1,000 people competing against another deck that was pretty dang similar. Darkrai Magnezone is the truth. Now, before I move on, I think I should show this cool variant of this that did really well in the tournament. This is not just Darkrai Magnezone, this is a different one. This is Darkrai Weezing Spiritomb, which I think is really cool. Obviously, you have Koga's in this deck, you have Cyrus's in this deck still. The nice thing about Spiritomb is it hits everybody, so it makes Cyrus very possible, like right at the start of the match. Right? As soon as they get their bench filled up, Spiritomb makes Cyrus a super real possibility. Couple of Leafs, Professors, Pokeballs, a Potion, and a couple of Giant Capes. The Potion here, I think, think is very interesting. And I think Potion might end up getting a lot of play in this meta because of Cyrus, right? Giant Cape is amazing. It gives you 20 additional HP. It sets up incredible HP breakpoints so that you can't get KO'd. For instance, your Darkrai has 140 HP. If you were putting it out in that active spot and your opponent has an Infernape, a Giant Cape on that makes sure that your Darkrai does not get KO'd. Now, the interesting thing about Potion is it wouldn't prevent that KO. But if your Darkrai takes damage, you bring it back to your bench, it takes 20 damage, you bring it back to your bench, that potion is the difference between your opponent's Cyrus working and not working. Unlike Sabrina, it can't pull something off the bench with no damage. So keep that in mind. I think Potion could see a lot of play. The next deck I want to talk about is absolutely near and dear to my heart because I love this deck. It is so fun to play. You were probably watching on stream, or maybe you didn't get to see it, where we were playing our Infernape deck. So this is an Infernape Moltres deck that was played here in the tournament. This has just the Infernape Moltres line, a couple of Giovannis for big, HP breakpoints. 140 damage from Infernape is great, but there's so many Pokemon with 150 HP. A couple of Professor's Research, Pokeballs, Pokemon Communication to make sure that you can find what you need for Monferno or Infernape, right? A couple of Giant Capes to help you survive the onslaught from your opponents, and Dawn. Dawn is incredibly powerful here. Dawn allows you to make some really amazing plays where you have your Moltres in the front, and then you use your Inferno Dance to power up your bench, right? You can then on turn 2 even, your turn 2, you can then use Dawn to throw an energy up to Moltres, use your Energy Zone to power it, and start heat blasting your opponents. You can also use Dawn to attack with Infernape, use the next turn to put an energy from your Energy Zone, Dawn from the bench, attack again with Infernape. An absolute must for this deck. I love it. I'm so glad it was doing well in this tournament. This next deck is a Lucario Aerodactyl deck that was really the hero of the stream. It was like the lone fighting deck trying to take down all of these dark decks, and it was really cool to watch. So much fun. You've got to see these matches because they are incredible nail biters all the way through. This has 2 Riolus, 2 Lucarios, a couple of Aerodactyl EXs with Primeval Law. Let me talk to you about this ability really quick on Aerodactyl. So many players got tripped up by Primeval Law this weekend. I don't think it's going to happen as much moving forward. I think people are going to remember, but the amount of people who realized they couldn't evolve in that active spot, moving Magneton to Magnezone especially, was amazing. This has 1 Hitmonchan, 1 Marshadow. Let me talk about the Hitmonchan here. Hitmonchan is really great because it attacks for 1 energy for 30 damage, which isn't amazing. 1 Lucario online, this is swinging for 50. 2 Lucarios online, this is doing 70 damage for 1 fighting energy. And then of course Marshadow is just great. An amazing revenge KO, and if you have a Lucario, this thing hits for 120 damage. The rest of the cards, couple of Professors, couple of Leafs. The big reason for Leaf is Lucario's retreat cost is 2, so it's a little tough to get out of there sometimes. A Cyrus, so you're able to pull in a damaged Pokemon. A Sabrina, so you're able to pull in something that's not damaged yet. Old Ambers, of course, for Aerodactyl. Pokeballs, 1 Giant Cape, and 1 Rocky Helmet. The Giant Cape and Rocky Helmet you're going to have to use depending on what your opponents are doing. You'll see the kind of HP breakpoints of their moves, and then you'll decide whether or not you want to use a Giant Cape on something like Aerodactyl to get it up to 160 HP and get it away from that kind of really dangerous 140 HP zone, or you want to use something like Rocky Helmet on your Hitmonchan so that when your opponents are trying to get rid of this really annoying Pokemon that's swinging for 1 energy, they are taking damage. Such a fun deck, and it did so well. There's another really cool deck I want to tell you about. Before we hop to that, I want to talk about a deck that actually played extremely well, a very small amount of Pokemon in this deck. It was really interesting. This was Celebi EX and Exeggutor EX. It had 1 Execute, 1 Celebi, 2 Exeggutor EXs, and then a ton of other cards, right? It had Professors, Ericas, Cyruses, Sabrina, 2 Pokeballs, 2 Pokemon Communications, 2 Potions, 2 Rocky Helmets, and 1 Giant Cape. A ton of tools, and really every opportunity to get Exeggutor as fast as possible and then power Celebi on the bench. No superior needed. The whole plan is Exeggutor as that wall, get it as quickly as you can possibly get it, and then start taking your opponents down. I actually do think with dark types becoming a real thing, we could see more and more grass decks being very popular to take down things like Darkrai and Weavile and such. Celebi could be it. Venusaur is another possibility, but there are a ton of grass Pokemon that don't get a lot of play. I wonder if we'll see some interesting stuff with Leafeon in the future, but this is the Celebi deck that did very, very well this weekend. Next, we have to talk about this metal deck. This is Skarmory Bastiodon. So if you've been watching content on my channel, you saw my Dialga Bastiodon that I absolutely love. This is an amazing variation of that gives up less points, right? It doesn't have Dialga, so you're not giving up 2 points on that EX Pokemon. This has 2 Skarmory and then 2 Bastiodon lines, Armor Fossils, Shieldon, and Bastiodon. And the amazing thing about this is you guarantee Skarmory. And because you're guaranteeing Skarmory and you're also running 2 Giant Capes and 2 Rocky Helmets, this thing is getting in that active spot no matter what, whether you're going first or second. You get 1 energy very, very quickly. You get a tool very quickly, and this thing is swinging for 50 damage. The big break point there, I'm sure that immediately pops into your head, is Manaphy, right? You're taking Manaphy down for 1. Your opponent's Manaphy has to run Giant Cape or it is getting KO'd by Skarmory. And there are a ton of Pokemon that take a lot of damage. Even something like Druddigon is now taking 2 turns to get KO'd, which is massive. So this is a really cool deck. Very few were played in this tournament, but it had something like an 80% win rate because the very few people who played it fared really well. Now, I don't think overall if this had the play rate of Darkrai, it would have an 80% win rate, but clearly you need to keep your eyes on this deck because some cool stuff is going on with it. It has Sabrina, Cyrus, Giovanni. It just has so many options, and it has potions. A lot of decks don't have potions. This has potions. If you haven't watched my Bastiodon video, just a quick rundown on this Pokemon. Once it is out, your opponents have to flip a coin when they are attacking you. Or I guess you're the one flipping the coin. Regardless, a coin is flipped. And when you get heads with this, you minus 100 damage from the attack. It's a 50-50 to reduce 100 damage. As Jeff Hoagland was pointing out on stream, my co-caster and content creator, should check out his stuff, he's great. As he was pointing out, this can eat a Charizard attack. It can eat a Crimson Storm. It's one of the only Pokemon in the game that can do anything about it. This and like Dugtrio or something, right? So really cool deck, and I think you absolutely need to check it out. Now, there were actually a few variations of Palkia that did pretty well in this tournament. Palkia actually fared pretty well. So the one I'm going to show you right here is one that I've not highlighted on the channel before, so I think it's a good one to talk about. This is Palkia EX Manaphy Starmie EX, and it has a few interesting things in here that I want to point out. First, of course, couple professors' research, couple of Pokeballs. It has Dawn, 2 Dawns, so you can move energy. I think that's very important, especially without Vaporeon, right? With Vaporeon, this isn't as relevant, even though Dawn's an extremely good card. It has 1 Leaf, so you're able to get that Palkia out. It has a couple of X speeds. This helps you for some breakpoints to get Palkia out, but also to get Manaphy out, right? And of course, I guess, you know, individual Staryu as well, because Starmie EX has no retreat cost. It has a Cyrus, which is pretty great in a deck like this. Dimensional Storm from Palkia not only does 150 damage to the Pokemon in front of you, it also damages the bench. This can set up some big KOs so that you can then Cyrus and pick something up with possibly Starmie EX. The big thing I want to point out is Giant Cape. And now after seeing this tournament, I do think if you're running a Palkia EX deck with Manaphy, Giant Cape is probably a must for Manaphy, so something can't take it down in 1 turn. Giant Cape brings its HP up to 70. There's really nothing that's going to be able to KO it quick enough to at least let you get 1 turn of powering your cards, right? And that is extremely important. So it's the reason I wanted to highlight this deck, and also because I love Starmie EX, and this was a cool variant of it. We saw Palkia Aerodactyl. Wow, it's been a long day. We saw Palkia Articuno, which was really cool. We also saw, of course, the Palkia Vaporeon that did very well throughout this tournament. Lots of great Palkia decks, which is awesome. It's been one of my favorite sort of setups in the new meta. It has been Palkia, so it was cool to see it do so well. This next deck I want to show you, I didn't get a chance to really see on stream, but this was a cool one and it did really well in the tournament, and I think it's because of so many grass type cards, and it just had a lot going on with it. So this is an Exeggutor EX Yanmega EX with Shaman, which I think is awesome. So Exeggutor EX, for the longest time since Genetic Apex, this has been one of the best cards in the game because it's one of the only cards that enjoys going on turn 1, right? So many cards want turn 2 so they can get their energy. Eggs, that's a different story. You actually would love going turn 1 because turn 3, you become Exeggutor EX, and for 1 energy, you're swinging. This also has Yanmega that you can end up putting on your bench, right? For 3 colorless energy, you're able to do damage. And the nice thing is, with Exeggutor requiring 1 energy, you can really power anything on the bench. We had Shaman. Shaman's just great for healing all of your cards. You heal them all for 10, right? But that creates some interesting breakpoints with decks like this because it has Erica inside of it for those big heals, and then it has Shaman to sort of top things off, and that can save you from some really unfortunate Cyrus moments with your opponents. This of course has Professors, Pokeballs, Ericas. It has a Leaf. The big reason for Leaf, of course, is to get that Exeggutor EX out of there if something bad's happening. A Cyrus to pull one of your opponent's Pokemon. 1 X speed, and this is mainly for Shaman, Yanmega, Yanma if they're in an unfortunate spot. A Giant Cape, and a Rocky Helmet. You can use this in a few different ways. The Giant Cape gives you amazing HP breakpoints on Yanmega. It takes it from 140 to 160, which is probably where you're gonna use this. The Rocky Helmet, you can put on Exeggutor. Now you got this it's like a Drud wall that is attacking you for possibly 80 every turn. So unbelievably mean. The last deck I want to talk about here is Aerodactyl EX and Rampardos. So this was a really fun one to watch. This has Hitmonlee and Farfetch'd as your basic Pokemon, right? So you're either starting Farfetch'd or Lee. Both of these pretty good starts, right? Farfetch'd will be a little more aggressive, allow you to do some damage, but Lee can attack the bench if your opponents are playing something like Gyarados, and we saw a lot of Gary still in this tourney. You then have your 2 fossils. You've got the 2 Skull Fossils, the 2 Old Ambers, and you're looking to power these up. Rampardos is nuts. I'm sure you've seen it. 130 damage for 1 fighting energy, and if it doesn't KO your opponent, it takes no recoil damage. Then of course, you have Aerodactyl EX that is able to do 80 damage for its 2 energy. That, you know, is a stage 1, so it's a little easier to get online. A lot of this deck is trying to get your Rampardos online so that you can devastate your opponents. You can clean them up with things like Lee. You can clean them up with things like Cyrus. So many fun plays were seen with this deck in this tournament. You should definitely watch the tournament if you haven't, because it's really fun and I feel like it gives you so many options. This has 2 Professors, only 1 Pokeball. The reason behind this is you only have 1 other basic Pokemon, right? 1 Sabrina, 1 Cyrus, 2 Pokemon Communications, and I think this is actually insanely valuable in this and many decks, but especially in this deck where not getting Cranidos or not getting Rampardos is chaotically bad, right? Again, the fossils, 1 X speed to help you with some maneuverability, and you are good to go. This one is one I really want to spend more time with. As soon as I am able to pull those Rampardos, we are good to go. I'm going to break down some more decks soon that didn't get a lot of players playing them, but were very, very cool, especially after we watched some other tournaments this weekend. So thank you all for watching. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the best decks that we have found so far in this meta from this tournament. I'm watching a lot of the other tournaments too, and these decks keep popping up. So I can't wait to see how the meta evolves after this, because what always happens is one deck comes out on top, just like last time. It was, oh man, Gyarados, nobody can beat it, and then all of a sudden Pikachu Zebstrika starts making a real comeback, right? Or becoming extremely relevant. Sneaky Lee is extremely relevant against that deck. Or, you know, we remember what happened with Mewtwo, and then Pikachu being fast enough to fight it, Charizard, you know, being able to do enough damage. Now I'm interested to see, how do players decide to counter Magnezone Darkrai, and how do players counter the counter that counters the counter that counters the counter. Counters the counter. Counters the counter the counter. Counters the counter. Counters the counter. Counters the counter. Counter. Counters the counter.